What if the key to handling today's chaos isn't found in the latest self-help trends, but in a 2,000-year-old philosophy? Imagine a way of thinking so timeless that it guided Roman emperors, inspired world leaders, and still holds the power to transform ordinary lives right now. That's the promise of Stoicism, not as some dusty relic of the past, but as a living, breathing toolkit for mastering your mind and rising above life's challenges. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's wisest Stoics, put it perfectly: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Those words weren't written for ancient Rome alone. They're a wake-up call for anyone feeling overwhelmed by the noise of modern life. Here's the surprising truth: Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or gritting your teeth through hardship. It's about clarity. It's about pausing long enough to ask yourself, what's truly within my control, and then acting with purpose, not panic. Think of deliberate reflection like a mirror, one that doesn't just show you your face, but reveals the gaps between who you are and who you could become. Every moment of frustration, every setback, every unexpected twist, these aren't just obstacles, they're raw material, and with the right mindset, you can sculpt them into stepping stones. This video is your invitation to that mindset. We're not just talking about philosophy, we're talking about practice. How do you turn ancient principles into daily habits? How do you shift from reacting to every storm to becoming the calm within it? Over the next while, we'll explore how Stoic reflection, done deliberately, can rewire your responses, sharpen your decisions, and unlock a version of yourself that's not just resilient but unshakable. Because growth isn't accidental, it's built moment by moment, thought by thought, and the journey starts right here. At the heart of Stoicism lies a simple but radical shift, replacing autopilot reactions with deliberate choices. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, put it bluntly: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That single idea changes everything. When your coworker takes credit for your idea, when traffic grinds to a halt, when plans unravel, those moments aren't just tests of patience. They're opportunities to exercise what Stoics called proherses, your power of choice. This isn't about pretending events don't affect you. It's about recognizing the space between stimulus and response, that brief but critical pause where your judgment lies. Seneca, the philosopher and advisor to Emperor Nero, spent years honing this skill through daily reflection. His letters reveal a man who didn't just philosophize about control, he practiced it. Each evening he'd ask himself, where did I let externals dictate my peace? Where did I confuse what's mine to govern with what isn't? That habit transformed his setbacks into lessons, his frustrations into fuel. Here's where theory meets practice. Picture your mind as a courtroom. Every external event, the rude comment, the missed promotion, the sudden inconvenience, stands as a witness. But you're the judge. Stoicism trains you to gavel down impulsive verdicts and instead ask, is this within my control? If not, what's a wiser use of my energy? Try this now. Think of one situation where you consistently react without that pause. Maybe it's when someone interrupts you, or when technology fails at the worst moment. That's your training ground, because Stoicism isn't a philosophy you recite. It's one you rehearse. Every time you catch yourself about to react and instead choose to respond, you're not just solving a problem. You're sculpting a mindset. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. Horns blare, minutes tick by, and your frustration builds. Here's the Stoic twist: the traffic jam itself isn't the problem, it's your expectations colliding with reality. This is the dichotomy of control in action, a concept so central to Stoicism that Epictetus opens his handbook with it. Some things are within our power while others are not. The difference between suffering and serenity often comes down to recognizing that line. What makes this ancient idea so powerful today? It forces a reckoning with where we invest our energy. You can't control the driver who cut you off, the red light that won't change, or the meeting you're late for. But you can control whether you white-knuckle the steering wheel or take a deep breath. You choose whether to rehearse angry monologues or use the delay to listen to an audiobook. That shift from fighting reality to working with it is where Stoicism transforms philosophy into lived freedom. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Studies on stress show that perceived control drastically impacts well-being. When researchers examined commuters, they found that those who accepted traffic as inevitable reported less frustration than those who saw it as a personal affront. Epictetus would nod knowingly. 2,000 years ago, he wrote, "Demand not that events should happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen, and you will go on well." Let's make this practical. Grab a pen and paper or pause to think and identify 3 stressors in your life right now. Now categorize them. Which aspects are truly within your power? Your colleague's bad mood, not yours to fix, but your preparation for the presentation they criticized. That's your territory. The weather ruining your weekend plans. Unchangeable, your decision to pivot to a cozy indoor activity. That's where your agency lies. This isn't passive acceptance, it's strategic focus. Think of an archer from Seneca's famous analogy. They can control their stance, their aim, their practice, but once the arrow leaves the bow, wind or a sudden movement could alter its path. The Stoic archer doesn't rage against the breeze. They concentrate on perfecting what they can influence. Your life is full of these arrows, projects where effort matters more than outcome, relationships where intent outweighs others' reactions, goals where the journey eclipses the destination. Here's your challenge tonight. Before bed, review one situation where you blurred the lines between controllable and uncontrollable. Did you waste mental energy on a flight delay, or did you use that time to call a friend or read? Every time you catch yourself conflating the two, you reclaim a piece of your peace, because mastering this dichotomy isn't about having a perfect life, it's about perfecting your response to an imperfect one. Before the sun even rises, there's a quiet power in those first conscious moments, a blank slate where the day hasn't yet rushed in with its demands. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled Rome with a philosopher's mind, knew this intimately. His personal writings, now known as Meditations, weren't meant for publication. They were his morning ritual, a dialogue with himself. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's the Stoic morning advantage, not just waking up, but waking up on purpose. Here's how to borrow that ancient practice for modern life. Start with just 5 minutes, no special apps or journals required. First, set your intentions. Ask yourself, what qualities do I want to embody today? Not goals like finish the report, but virtues, patience in meetings, courage to speak up, or focus despite distractions. Marcus didn't review his to-do list at dawn. He reminded himself, today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, but I cannot be angry or feel hindered, because how I respond is mine to govern. Next, anticipate challenges. Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of obstacles. Visualize potential friction points, a difficult conversation, a project hurdle, even your own temptations to procrastinate. This isn't pessimism, it's psychological inoculation. Like a fire drill, rehearsing possible scenarios strips them of their power to derail you in the moment. Finally, anchor in gratitude. Seneca wrote, "No man can live happily who regards himself alone." Pause to acknowledge one thing you often take for granted: clean water, a bed to sleep in, someone who cares about you. This isn't just feel-good advice. Neuroscience shows gratitude practices rewire the brain's negativity bias, making you more resilient to stress. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, carve out those 5 morning minutes. No grand speeches, just a quiet reckoning with the day ahead. Notice what shifts. Do frustrations sting less when you've already anticipated them? Do interactions feel more intentional when you've chosen your virtues in advance? The Stoics didn't chase productivity hacks. They mastered the art of mental clarity, and it all began at dawn. While the morning primes your mind for the day ahead, the evening is where Stoics carved out space for growth. Seneca, the philosopher who navigated the treacherous courts of Emperor Nero, ended each day with a practice he called retrospectio, a deliberate review of his actions, missteps, and insights. He didn't do this to berate himself, but to refine his character like a sculptor chiseling marble. The soul should be called to account every day, he wrote. What weakness have I conquered? What temptation resisted? Where did I fall short? And where did I rise? Here's why this practice matters more today than ever. Modern life moves at a dizzying pace, leaving little room for reflection. We scroll instead of study, react instead of review. Seneca's nightly ritual cuts through that noise, transforming chaotic days into deliberate progress. Imagine treating your life like an artisan treats their craft, not with harsh criticism, but with the patient eye of someone committed to mastery. Let's break it down into 3 simple questions you can start tonight. First, what went well? This isn't just about achievements, it's about moments where your Stoic training held strong. Did you pause before snapping at a loved one? Did you reframe a setback as neutral material to work with? Celebrating these wins reinforces neural pathways, making virtue more automatic. Second, what could improve? Notice the phrasing. It's not "what did I fail at?" Stoicism isn't about perfection, it's about progression. Perhaps you noticed your pulse racing when a colleague interrupted you, or you spent 30 minutes ruminating over a comment that didn't matter. These aren't failures, they're data points. Like a coach reviewing game footage, you're identifying patterns to adjust. Finally, what did I learn? This is where the magic happens. Maybe you discovered that hunger makes you irritable, so tomorrow you'll pack snacks. Or you realize that checking emails first thing derails your focus, so you'll start with your morning ritual instead. Seneca called these lessons daily salvations, small rescues from repeating the same mistakes. Grab any notebook and try this tonight. No flourishes needed, just honesty. The goal isn't to fill pages, but to create a feedback loop between your ideals and your actions. Over time, you'll spot recurring themes. Perhaps patience falters when you're tired, or courage wavers in unfamiliar settings. That awareness becomes your curriculum for growth. Consider the alternative, living on autopilot, letting days blur together without examination. Seneca warned, life is very short and anxious for those who forget the past, neglect the present, and fear the future. Your evening review is the antidote, a quiet reclaiming of your narrative, one day at a time. The story goes that when Cato the Younger, the Stoic statesman known for his unshakable integrity, was shipwrecked on a treacherous voyage, he didn't curse the gods or lament his misfortune. Instead, he gathered his soaked belongings, looked at the raging sea, and calmly remarked, "Now I can truly begin to live." That moment captures the essence of amor fati, the love of fate, not as passive resignation, but as an active embrace of every circumstance as raw material for growth. Marcus Aurelius would later echo this mindset in his Meditations. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think about how revolutionary this is for our modern lives. When your flight gets cancelled, when a client rejects your proposal, when your body betrays you with illness, the default response is frustration or despair. But Stoicism offers a radical alternative. What if these weren't disruptions to your path, but part of the path itself? Imagine approaching obstacles like a blacksmith views fire, not as something to avoid, but as the very element that tempers steel. Consider the difference between 2 employees facing a demotion. One spirals into self-pity, convinced the universe is against them. The other, armed with amor fati, asks, "What can this teach me about my blind spots?" Where does this free me to explore new skills? The setback is identical, but the latter transforms it into fuel. This isn't positive thinking, it's strategic thinking. As Epictetus, born into slavery and crippled by a cruel master, would say, difficulties reveal genius while ease conceals it. History brims with these transformations. Beethoven composed his greatest works as deafness closed in. Lincoln's string of political defeats forged the empathy that united a nation. Even in nature, forests need periodic fires to clear deadwood and spark new growth. The Stoics recognized this universal truth. Friction isn't the enemy of progress, it's the whetstone that sharpens it. So here's your challenge. Pick one recent frustration, a missed opportunity, a criticism that stung, even a mundane inconvenience like a broken appliance. Now interrogate it like a Stoic. What strength does this situation demand that I haven't yet developed? Where might this problem actually be protecting me from a bigger misstep? When you start mining obstacles for their hidden gifts, you'll notice something extraordinary. The very things you once resisted become the experiences that shape your best self. This shift isn't about denying pain or pretending hardship doesn't hurt. It's about recognizing that within every difficulty lies a choice, to be diminished by what happens or to let it sculpt you into someone far more resilient. The shipwreck that stranded Cotto didn't break him, it revealed him, and the same is true for you. The next time life throws you off course, remember, the storm isn't hindering your journey. It's preparing you for waters you've yet to sail. Stoic calm isn't about bottling up emotions or pretending everything's fine. It's about creating space between what happens and how you engage with it. Picture a pond disturbed by a thrown rock. The ripples aren't wrong or unnatural, but the water doesn't cling to them. It returns to stillness because that's its nature. That's equanimity, not the absence of waves, but the capacity to settle without force. Epictetus, who taught philosophy while enduring the noise of ancient Rome's crowded streets, put it plainly. If someone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses or defend yourself. Just reply, he must not know my other faults, or he wouldn't have mentioned just these. Shift from taking the bait to observing it with detachment is the essence of Stoic composure. Now, let's make this tangible. Try this the next time your pulse quickens in frustration. Pause and take 3 deliberate breaths. Not shallow sips of air, but deep inhales that expand your diaphragm, followed by slow exhales. This isn't just stress advice, it's neuroscience. Breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, hitting the brakes on fight or flight reactions. Ancient Stoics didn't know about cortisol, but they understood the power of this pause. Seneca would delay responding to provocations until his initial heat cooled, writing, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Here's a challenge for the next week. Institute a response delay rule for heated moments. When a coworker's email sparks irritation or a family member pushes your buttons, give yourself a 15-minute buffer before replying. Use that time to ask 2 Stoic questions. What part of this situation can I actually influence? And what would my best self do here? You'll often find that the urgency evaporates, leaving clearer judgment in its place. But equanimity isn't just for crises, it's a daily discipline. Consider how you handle minor annoyances, the colleague who chews loudly, the app that glitches, the rain on your day off. These are your training grounds. Epictetus advised, practice being unaffected by small things first, then gradually extend this to bigger things. Start with the trivial and you'll build resilience for the profound. Modern life bombards us with distractions designed to hijack our attention, pinging notifications, sensational headlines, endless comparisons. The Stoic antidote. Selective indifference, not to life itself, but to the noise that doesn't deserve your inner peace. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have dominion over your mind, not outside events. Recognize this and you'll find strength. That dominion starts with a single breath, a conscious pause, a refusal to let externals dictate your equilibrium. The calm you cultivate isn't passive, it's the quiet power of choosing where to invest your energy, moment by moment. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once stood before his students holding an empty cup. Happiness, he said, isn't about filling this vessel with endless desires, it's about realizing how little we actually need to feel full. That moment captures the heart of Stoicism's discipline of desire, not the rejection of wants, but the art of discernment. The Stoics drew a sharp line between natural desires, those aligned with growth, health, and connection, and vain ones like chasing status, luxury, or others' approval. Seneca put it bluntly, it is not that we have so little time, but that we waste so much of it on cravings that leave us emptier than before. Here's the modern twist: we live in a world engineered to inflame vain desires. Algorithms whisper, you need this upgrade, that trend, this validation. But Stoicism offers a counterweight, a way to audit your wants like a philosopher reviewing receipts. Take a recent study where researchers tracked people's happiness after purchasing material goods versus experiences. The thrill of a new gadget faded within weeks, while memories of a concert or trip grew richer with time. The Stoics wouldn't be surprised. They knew desires rooted in virtue, learning, creating, contributing compound like interest, while those tied to externals depreciate fast. Consider two professionals eyeing a promotion. One hungers for the title to impress neighbors, the other sees it as a platform to mentor others. The outward goal is identical, but the desires powering it diverge radically. Epictetus warned, when you long for things not in your control, you're forever chained to disappointment. That's why the discipline of desire begins with a simple question: is this want serving my growth or someone else's expectations? Seneca's letters reveal a man who dined on simple food, wore plain clothing, yet described himself as richer than kings because he'd mastered wanting less. His secret: regular want audits. He'd ask himself, if I lost this tomorrow, would it diminish my character? Try this with your own life, that fancy car. It gets you from point A to B, same as a modest one, the Instagram perfect vacation. Compare it to the unhurried joy of a walk with a friend where no one's tracking likes. This week, pick one desire to detach from, not through deprivation but clarity. Maybe it's refreshing your inbox for validation, buying yet another productivity app you won't use, or agonizing over a comment section's opinions. Each time the craving arises, pause and recite Seneca's mantra. Freedom isn't gained by satisfying desires, but by removing them. You'll discover something startling. The less you chase shadows, the more you'll feel the substance of your life expanding. Because Stoicism's ultimate revelation about desire isn't about having less, it's about uncovering how much you've had all along. There's a quiet alchemy that happens when thoughts move from your mind onto paper, a crystallization of reflection that turns fleeting impressions into lasting wisdom. This is where Stoic journaling transcends simple diary keeping. Random venting might offer temporary relief, but structured journaling, as practiced by Marcus Aurelius in his private meditations, becomes a mirror showing not just what happened, but who you're becoming. His writings weren't polished essays, they were raw, repetitive, and deeply personal. One entry reads, "When you wake reluctant to rise, remember, I'm rising to do the work of a human being." Why resent it when that's what I was born for? That's the power of deliberate prompts. They reframe experience as fuel for growth. Modern psychology confirms what the Stoics intuited. Structured writing organizes chaotic emotions. Studies show that people who journal with purposeful prompts rather than just recounting events experience greater clarity and emotional resilience. Think of it like panning for gold. Venting is sifting through muddy water. Stoic journaling uses specific questions as your sieve, catching the nuggets of insight while letting trivial grievances wash away. Here's how to start. First, anchor your practice in virtue. Instead of asking, what annoyed me today, try, where did I practice courage, wisdom, or self-control? Marcus often catalogued his lapses not to wallow but to spot patterns. He wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety," or "No, I discarded it because it was within me in my own perceptions, not outside." That shifter from "things happened to me" to "here's how I engaged with them" turns journaling into a workshop for character. Next, embrace imperfection. Your template isn't a report card, it's a compass. Try these 3 nightly questions. What small victory revealed my progress today? Maybe you paused before snapping at a coworker. What resistance did I avoid tackling? Perhaps you skipped your workout but identified the excuse. What's one way tomorrow could be subtly better? Example, I'll check emails after my morning ritual. Notice the language of progress, not perfection, subtly better, not completely transformed. Marcus' journals show a man constantly course-correcting, not condemning himself. One entry admits, "I'm still prone to anger, but I no longer rationalize it as righteous." That's the rhythm to emulate. Observe without judgment, then adjust. Your journal isn't for posterity, it's for practice. Want to go deeper? Add a weekly premortem. Borrowing from Stoic premeditatio, write, "If I continue current habit, where might I be in 6 months?" Contrast that with, "If I nurture desired virtue, what could unfold?" This isn't fantasy, it's forecasting consequences. When Seneca imagined losing his wealth or status, he realized, nothing that can be taken was ever truly mine. The magic lies in consistency. 2 minutes nightly beats an hour once a month. Keep your journal by your bed or use a notes app for moments between meetings. The medium doesn't matter, the intentionality does. As Marcus reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Your journal is the quiet space where that becoming takes shape, one honest line at a time. Imagine waking up tomorrow to find your most relied upon comfort suddenly gone, the job that provides stability, the technology that connects you, or the person whose presence feels like home. This unsettling exercise isn't pessimism, it's premeditatio malorum, the Stoic practice of negative visualization that Seneca called the premeditation of adversities. Far from morbid fixation, this mental rehearsal serves 2 profound purposes. It immunizes you against future shock by exposing hidden dependencies, and it transforms ordinary moments into gifts you'd otherwise overlook. Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to hold every enjoyment with a loose grip, adding, "Tell yourself when you embrace your child, your spouse, your friend, I may lose you tomorrow." Here's the paradox at work. By consciously imagining loss, you paradoxically deepen your capacity to savor what you have. Modern psychology calls this the mental subtraction technique. Research shows people who picture their lives without key blessings report higher gratitude and life satisfaction afterward. The Stoics discovered this truth centuries earlier, when Seneca wrote, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life." He wasn't inviting despair. He was engineering appreciation, the kind that makes you set down your phone during dinner because you've truly considered the ephemeral nature of shared laughter. But there's a crucial boundary between productive reflection and unproductive dread. Epictetus warned against fearing what may never happen, comparing it to a sailor so obsessed with storms they refused to board the ship. The goal isn't to dwell on darkness, but to let it sharpen your perception of light. Think of it like tasting food more intensely after fasting, or noticing the vibrancy of colors when clouds part. Negative visualization works the same way. It's a temporary lens that heightens presence. Try this today. Pick one ordinary comfort, your morning coffee, the ability to walk pain-free, the hum of your refrigerator. Close your eyes and envision its absence. Notice 2 things, the visceral reaction, perhaps panic or sadness, and the subtle shift when you return to reality. That tension between absence and presence, that's where gratitude lives. Marcus Aurelius trained himself this way, writing, "When you arise in the morning, give thanks that you see the dawn. If you can't give thanks that you still have breath to complain." The practice reaches its peak when applied to relationships. Next time a loved one speaks, pause mentally and picture this conversation as your last. Does it change how you listen? Seneca observed that we often squander time as if it's drawn from an abundant well, yet death could cap that well any moment. This isn't meant to terrify, but to prioritize, to replace distracted, quality time with undiluted presence. Now consider the modern traps this practice helps you sidestep. How many vacations are ruined by fixating on Instagram posts instead of the actual sunset? How often do we scroll past family members absorbed in screens, oblivious to the fleeting nature of shared hours? Negative visualization punctures that complacency. As you go about your day, occasionally ask, if this were my last experience of this meal, this commute, this mundane Tuesday, would I engage with it differently? The answers will recalibrate your attention, pulling you from autopilot into vivid awareness. One caution: this tool loses power if overused. Like salt in cooking, a pinch enhances flavor, a handful ruins the dish. Limit deliberate negative visualization to brief, scheduled moments, perhaps during your evening reflection or morning planning. The rest of the time, let its after effects work subtly, like a lens you occasionally polish but don't stare through constantly. What makes this ancient practice so urgent today is the illusion of permanence our digital age fosters. With everything from groceries to friendships available on demand, it's easy to assume comforts will always be there. The Stoics knew better. Their version of resilience wasn't about building thicker walls against misfortune, but developing eyes that see blessings clearly before fate forces the lesson upon you. That's the real gift of premeditatio malorum, not just preparing for loss, but uncovering the extraordinary in what you already hold. Stoicism has always been a philosophy of apprenticeship, not just to abstract ideas, but to living examples of virtue in action. The ancients called these figures prokopton, those who'd made progress toward wisdom, and they studied them with the same intensity we might analyze a master pianist's technique. Socrates, though not a Stoic himself, became their North Star, the man who drank hemlock rather than betray his principles, proving that character outlasts even death. Then there was Cato the Younger, whose refusal to compromise with corruption became so legendary that centuries later, Dante placed him as the guardian of purgatory's gates. These weren't just historical footnotes to the Stoics, they were living proof that human beings could mold their souls into something unbreakable. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, made this explicit. If you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless in extraneous matters. Imitate those whose virtues you admire first outwardly until their habits become your own. Notice the progression, not blind hero worship, but deliberate emulation. Like a painter copying Renaissance masters to internalize brushstrokes, the Stoics understood that modeling precedes mastery. Your task isn't to become a carbon copy of Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, but to reverse engineer their strengths into tools for your own challenges. This raises a vital question for our era. Who are your modern prokopton? They might not be philosophers. Perhaps it's the teacher in your community who treats every student with dignity despite overcrowded classrooms. Maybe it's the entrepreneur who prioritizes ethics over easy profits, or the nurse who responds to hostility with steady compassion. Stoicism's genius lies in recognizing that role models aren't distant icons, they're mirrors showing fragments of the person you're capable of becoming. Try this exercise today. Identify 3 people, one historical, one in your immediate world, one public figure, whose traits resonate with your aspirations. Then go deeper than admiration. Study their decisions, not just their achievements. How did your colleague handle that unfair criticism with such grace? What did your grandmother's resilience during hardship teach you about endurance? As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal after reflecting on his mentors, "From Rusticus I learned to read attentively, from Apollonius independence and steadiness of judgment." His gratitude wasn't passive, it was a blueprint. Here's where modern psychology collides with ancient wisdom. Studies on vicarious learning reveal that observing others' virtuous actions activates neural pathways similar to performing those actions ourselves. When you witness someone choosing patience over pettiness, your brain files it away as a live option for future use. The Stoics intuited this truth long before fMRI scans. They knew that surrounding yourself with exemplars, even through stories, rewires your instincts over time. But beware the trap of comparison. Role models aren't meant to highlight your shortcomings, they're guides for incremental growth. When Epictetus advised, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it," he wasn't demanding perfection tomorrow. He was urging you to borrow courage from those who have walked further down the path. Start small. Next time you face a situation where you'd normally react impulsively, pause and ask, how would your chosen mentor navigate this? Then take one step in that direction. The ultimate goal isn't to collect heroes like trophies, but to distill their essence into your daily practice. As Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, "Cherish some man of high character and keep him ever before your eyes, living as if he were watching you." That's the alchemy of Stoic mentorship, turning external inspiration into internal constitution. Your virtues begin as seeds planted by others, but with consistent tending, they blossom into a garden no one can take from you. Every decision you make, from what to eat for lunch to whether to change careers, isn't just a choice. It's a test. The Stoics saw life as a continuous examination where each moment presents a question. Will you act in alignment with your highest principles, or will you let impulse steer the ship? This is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one." His journal reveals a man who framed even mundane tasks as opportunities to practice virtues like wisdom, courage, and justice, not as abstract ideals but as daily disciplines. Imagine a simple flowchart for your next decision. First question, does this action serve my best self? Not your comfort, not your ego, but the version of you that embodies Stoic virtues. When faced with a colleague's unethical request, courage might demand speaking up despite social risk. When scrolling late into the night, temperance suggests closing the screen to honor tomorrow's clarity. Justice appears when you tip generously despite poor service, recognizing the humanity of an overworked server. Wisdom shines when you pause to research before sharing that inflammatory headline. These aren't grand gestures, they're micro-exams where your character gets graded moment by moment. History offers a striking example in Thomas More, the Renaissance statesman who chose execution over betraying his conscience. While not a Stoic, his famous last words, "I die the king's good servant, but God's first," echo the Stoic priority of integrity over survival itself. But you needn't face an executioner to practice this. Consider the modern dilemma of a salesperson pressured to meet quotas by overselling. The virtuous choice, transparency with clients, might risk short-term targets but builds long-term trust. As Epictetus noted, no theft brings more profit than a stolen advantage taken at the cost of honor. Here's your challenge. Pick one pending decision, whether to confront a friend's hurtful comment, invest in that questionable get-rich-quick scheme, or even how to spend your next free hour. Now interrogate it through the 4 cardinal virtues. Is this wise, aligned with long-term good, just fair to others, courageous, facing necessary discomfort? Temperate, moderate, and balanced, the answer might not simplify your choice, but it will clarify what's at stake, not just the outcome, but the kind of person you're choosing to become. Marcus Aurelius left us a potent reminder: your integrity is your destiny. Every time you treat decisions as virtue tests, you're not just solving a problem, you're sculpting a legacy. The flowchart isn't just a tool, it's a mirror showing who stands behind your choices, and that reflection, more than any external result, is where Stoicism finds its power. Epictetus never had to navigate the minefield of social media likes or workplace politics, yet his advice cuts straight to the heart of our modern struggle. If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to externals. That phrase, with regard to externals, holds the key. The Stoics didn't advocate ignoring feedback outright. They drew a line between constructive criticism that sharpens your character and empty praise or blame that derails your peace. Imagine two artists, one obsessively refreshing reviews, the other refining their craft in a quiet studio. Both might create, but only one remains sovereign over their own standards. Social media has twisted this dynamic into a hall of mirrors, where applause and outrage alike are commodified. Every notification triggers a hit of dopamine or cortisol, conditioning us to outsource our self-worth to strangers' thumbs. The Stoic antidote, internal metrics. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not for viral quotes, but to hold himself accountable to his own principles. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. That inversion, prioritizing outsiders' fleeting judgments over your own hard-won values, is the trap Stoicism helps you escape. Try this experiment, a 7-day feedback fast. Not by deleting accounts or quitting your job, but by consciously redirecting attention. Each time you feel the itch to check how many liked your post or what someone thought of your presentation, pause. Replace that impulse with a question. Does this align with the person I'm committed to becoming? You might discover that certain platforms or relationships function like emotional slot machines. You keep pulling the lever, hoping for validation payouts that never satisfy. Epictetus warned, whoever controls you becomes your master. When you measure your worth by external reactions, you've handed over the keys to your contentment. Consider whose opinions currently weigh too heavily on your scales. A dismissive parent's voice in your head, a colleague whose approval feels like oxygen. Stoicism invites you to audit these influences with cold-eyed clarity. Imagine standing before a tribunal where every judge represents someone whose opinion you've overvalued. Now cross-examine them. What qualifies this person to arbitrate my choices? Are their standards aligned with my virtues? You'll often find they're grading you on a rubric you never agreed to uphold. This isn't about arrogance or dismissing legitimate growth opportunities. It's about discernment, separating the signal from the noise. Seneca distinguished between the philosopher who adjusts his course based on reasoned critique and the crowd pleaser who bends to every whim. The wise man's soul is like the universe, it blends with celestial things while standing firm in itself. Start small. Next time you share an idea, notice where your attention goes. Are you crafting it for impact or for applause? When criticism lands, ask, does this reveal a blind spot I can address, or is it merely someone's subjective preference? The more you practice this filtering, the clearer your inner compass becomes, because Stoic indifference isn't a wall against the world. It's a sieve that lets through only what nourishes your growth. Seneca's piercing words in On the Shortness of Life cut through the noise of our overcrowded calendars. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Replace time with attention, and you've diagnosed modern exhaustion, an era where busyness masquerades as productivity and urgency hijacks meaning. The average person will spend over 11 years of their life staring at screens, yet report feeling starved for moments that truly matter. Stoicism offers a radical alternative. Time management isn't about squeezing more in. It's about ruthlessly protecting what deserves your limited breath. Consider how we confuse motion with progress. Answering emails feels productive, but does it align with your deepest values? Attending back-to-back meetings checks boxes, but do they move your life's needle? Seneca observed this 2,000 years ago. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they're most wasteful. The antidote lies in a Stoic practice called Memento Mori, remembering death. Far from morbid, this is the ultimate prioritization tool. Picture holding an hourglass with grains representing your remaining days. Would you let today's grains slip through your fingers on trivial arguments, mindless scrolling, or tasks that won't matter in a month? History's most effective minds leveraged this awareness. Leonardo da Vinci carried a notebook everywhere, sketching ideas between commissions because he knew genius requires stolen moments. Benjamin Franklin scheduled air baths hours for open-ended thinking long before science confirmed creativity thrives in unstructured time. These weren't productivity hacks, they were rebellions against society's false urgency. Here's your challenge: audit one time wasting habit this week. Start small, perhaps the 20 minutes lost daily to social media rabbit holes or the quick errands that fracture your focus. Track it like a scientist observing an experiment, then ask Seneca's defining question: does this activity expand my life or merely fill it? You might discover, as one executive did when she logged her week, that 80% of her critical tasks could be delegated or deleted without consequence. Digital distractions prey on our biological impulses, but Stoicism equips you to counter them. When your phone buzzes with a notification, pause and visualize the grave. Not to paralyze, but to clarify: is this interruption worth a sliver of your finite existence? The Roman Stoics would have envied our tools but pitied our fractured attention. They knew what we've forgotten, that a life well lived isn't measured in clicks but in coherent purpose. Your calendar is more than a grid, it's the ledger of your soul's investments. Spend it as wisely as you would your last breaths. There's a reason alchemists spent centuries trying to turn lead into gold. It's the ultimate metaphor for transformation. Stoicism offers its own version of this magic through prosody, the art of mindful attention to your inner world. Picture yourself as both scientist and subject in a lab where emotions aren't good or bad, they're data. When frustration bubbles up during a traffic jam or jealousy flares at a friend's success, prosody teaches you to observe these reactions like storm clouds passing overhead, acknowledging their presence without letting them dictate your actions. Marcus Aurelius perfected this. When force of circumstance upsets your equanimity, regain control quickly without staying upset longer than you must. Notice the nuance. He doesn't say don't feel, he says don't linger. This is where the view from above technique becomes your ally. Imagine zooming out mentally, not just to your city's skyline, but to the curve of the earth itself. From there, your argument with a coworker shrinks to a speck. So does the promotion you didn't get. This cosmic perspective doesn't trivialize your struggles, it contextualizes them. History's greatest Stoics used this mental telescope regularly. Seneca would envision the vastness of time to remind himself that today's crisis would be forgotten in a century. Try it now with any current worry. See it from the vantage point of your future self, or better yet, from the silence of deep space. The emotion may still exist, but its gravitational pull weakens. Anger gets special attention in Stoic teachings because it's the emotion that most convincingly masquerades as righteousness. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire during wars and plagues, left himself blunt reminders. How much more harmful are the consequences of anger than the causes of it? Modern neuroscience confirms this anger floods your system with cortisol, impairing judgment and literally shrinking your prefrontal cortex's problem-solving capacity. The Stoic solution: label it. The moment you mentally note this is anger, you create critical distance. It's no longer you, it's a passing weather pattern in your mind. Here's your practical toolkit for emotional alchemy. First, build your pause button. When tension arises, a rude email, a personal slight, freeze before reacting. Literally set a timer for 90 seconds, the average lifespan of an emotion's biochemical surge. During that window, name what you're feeling with clinical precision. This is resentment, or this is performance anxiety. Next, apply the view from above. Picture the situation from next month's perspective, or imagine describing it to your most level-headed friend. Finally, ask Marcus's defining question: does this emotion serve my best self? Sometimes the answer is yes. Righteous anger fuels necessary action. Often, you'll find it's just mental noise masquerading as meaning. The real test comes when theory meets messy reality. That colleague who takes credit for your ideas, instead of rehearsing cutting remarks, observe your indignation like a doctor monitoring a fever, interested but detached. The cancelled flight that ruins your vacation, note the frustration, then zoom out to see it against the backdrop of your lifetime's travels. Emotional alchemy isn't about suppressing reactions, it's about transmuting them from raw impulses into considered responses. As Epictetus put it, what upsets people isn't things themselves, but their judgments about things. Your power lies not in controlling every external event, but in mastering the space between what happens and how you choose to meet it. That space is where lead becomes gold. Epictetus once asked his students a question that cuts through our modern noise. Have you nothing better to do than worry about what others say about you? In an era where hot takes flood, social media and conversations often feel more like competitions than connections. Stoic restraint in speech becomes revolutionary. The ancient discipline of silence wasn't about muteness, it was about precision. Before opening his mouth, a Stoic would run words through 3 filters. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Imagine applying just the first filter to half the comments online. The internet might go quiet. Consider how most conversations unfold. Someone shares news and reflexively we match it with our own story. A colleague vents and we chime in with a bigger grievance. This isn't dialogue, it's dueling monologues. The Stoics proposed an alternative, listening as athletic training for the mind. Epictetus, who was owned as a slave before teaching philosophy, understood power dynamics intimately. He noticed how careless speech often reveals internal chaos. If your choices are beautiful, why expose them to the marketplace of opinion? Try this challenge. Designate tomorrow as a half-talk day. For every minute you speak, aim to listen for 2. You'll notice something startling: how often you prepare responses while others talk, or how gossip masquerades as bonding. Ancient Stoic classrooms had a practice where students would place a pebble in their mouth when tempted to interrupt. We don't need literal rocks today, but the principle remains. That pause between thought and utterance is where wisdom breathes. Identify your speech triggers. Maybe it's when someone dismisses your expertise or when office politics swirl. Those moments when your pulse quickens and words rush out, that's your training ground. Seneca described speech as clothing for thoughts. We wouldn't leave home half-dressed, so why hurl half-formed ideas into the world? Modern research validates this. People who pause before responding in negotiations achieve better outcomes, and teams with balanced speaking times outperform those dominated by a few voices. The deeper magic lies in what happens when you stop filling silence. Musicians understand rests are part of the composition. Japanese art values mar the space between objects. Similarly, deliberate speech gaps allow others to be truly heard. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome's chaos by listening more than proclaiming. His journal reminds him, any unnecessary thing you say misses its mark. Even the most graceful speech eventually decays in the air. Notice the paradox: by speaking less, your words gain weight. Think of the last time someone truly listened to you. No phones, no glancing at watches, no mental rebuttals brewing. That presence is a gift Stoics aim to cultivate. Today, try Epictetus' filter with one conversation. Before sharing that bit of office gossip or unloading your frustration, check, is this true or just juicy? Necessary or just habitual, kind or just clever? You might find your lips staying closed more often but your influence growing stronger. Because in a world addicted to noise, the rarest power isn't being heard. It's understanding when silence speaks loudest. True friendship in the Stoic sense isn't about convenience or chemistry, it's a forge where character is tempered. Seneca, whose letters to his friend Lucilius read like a masterclass in virtuous bonds, wrote, "Friendship always benefits, love sometimes injures." He wasn't dismissing affection, but highlighting a crucial distinction. Shallow connections revolve around shared pleasures or mutual utility, while Stoic friendships are alliances of mutual elevation. Think of it like two trees planted close enough that their roots intertwine underground, each drawing nutrients that help the other weather storms. Modern relationships often follow transactional logic networking for career gains, maintaining social circles out of habit, or bonding over gossip like it's currency. The Stoics proposed something radical. A friend should mirror your aspirations, not just your current state. In one letter, Seneca warns against the crowd that drags you down, comparing toxic companions to wet logs in a fire. They don't burn themselves, but they smother your flames. His solution: cultivate friendships where accountability outweighs approval, where hard truths are offered as gifts and growth is the unspoken contract. Consider how this plays out in daily life. A superficial friend might console you after a failure with platitudes. A Stoic ally asks, "What can we learn here?" One enables complacency, the other ignites progress. Epictetus took this further, suggesting we audit our relationships as rigorously as our diets. Just as bad company ruins good habits, virtuous friends inoculate against folly. History's great duos embody this. Marcus Aurelius and his teacher Rusticus, Seneca, and Lucilius, partnerships where challenge was the highest form of care. Here's where Stoic friendship collides with modern loneliness. Social media metrics trick us into conflating followers with friends, yet studies show people feel more isolated than ever. The Stoic antidote isn't more connections, but deeper ones. Imagine pruning your social garden, keeping those who reflect your virtues, not just your vices. This doesn't mean cutting ties with struggling loved ones, but recognizing when a relationship fuels stagnation rather than growth. Your challenge: within the next 48 hours, reach out to someone who embodies Stoic values, not to extract wisdom, but to engage in the kind of dialogue Seneca treasured. Maybe it's the coworker who stays calm under pressure, the relative who faces hardship with quiet dignity, or the mentor who asks tough questions. Don't just admire them, initiate a conversation where substance outweighs small talk. Ask what principles guide their decisions, or share a struggle seeking Stoic perspective. Because the ultimate test of friendship isn't how often you laugh together, but whether you leave each interaction slightly more aligned with your best selves. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, a single hour spent with a true friend is worth more than years with those who bring out lesser versions of you. That hour begins now, not in theory, but in a message sent, a call made, a silent pact to nurture bonds that fortify rather than simply comfort. There's a moment in Plato's dialogues where Socrates, faced with insults from an adversary, responds not with anger but with genuine curiosity, as if the insult were a puzzle to be solved rather than a wound to lick. If someone offered me a gift I didn't deserve, he mused, should I accept it? Then why accept undeserved criticism? That playful detachment captures the Stoic art of turning insults into opportunities. The key isn't pretending words don't sting. It's recognizing that their power over you depends entirely on the meaning you assign them. Ancient Stoics visualized this skill through the metaphor of a rock and a reed. A rigid rock shatters under force, while a reed bends with the wind and springs back unharmed. When criticism comes your way, you're not obligated to stand like a monolith absorbing every blow. You can choose the reed's wisdom, acknowledging the feedback without letting it uproot your peace. Marcus Aurelius refined this practice during his reign, writing in his private journal, "When another blames or hates you, what do they refer to but their own judgments? Yet those judgments are like breath on a mirror. They don't define you unless you let them condense." Let's make this practical. Imagine a coworker snaps, "Your presentation was a mess. Did you even prepare?" A reactive reply might escalate the conflict. A Stoic response, however, starts with a mental pause. First, assess the criticism's validity. If it's true, "I did rush the slides. I'll allocate more time next time," it's a gift, however poorly wrapped. If it's false, "Actually, I spent 10 hours on research," dismiss it like a misdelivered package. Humor can be a shield here, not to mock but to deflate tension. Channeling Socrates, you might smile and say, "Wow, you're right, next time I'll aim for slightly less messy." The deeper skill lies in distinguishing constructive friction from pointless noise. A chef improves when a food critic notes uneven seasoning, but ignores trolls who hate all cauliflower on principle. Epictetus, who endured slavery and physical disability, offered a litmus test. Does this person's opinion touch upon something within my control? If yes, improve. If no, file it under weather report. Interesting, but not worth rearranging your life over. Now role-play this scenario. Your relative mocks your career choices at a family dinner. Instead of defending or attacking, try the Stoic sidestep. "You might be right. Let's see where this path leads." It's not surrender, it's refusing to play a game with rigged rules. Because the ultimate power move isn't winning every argument, it's deciding which arguments are even worth your energy. As Seneca wrote while exiled for political criticism, "A wise man cares not for what he lacks, but for what he has, including the freedom to choose his battles." That freedom becomes your compass, turning storms of criticism into mere wind that bends the reeds but never breaks the roots. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who endured exile with quiet dignity, had a revolutionary take on what most of us call failure. "Hardship is like a dog's leash," he said. "It pulls you back not to punish you, but to keep you from running blindly into traffic." That image changes everything. Your setbacks aren't proof the universe is against you. They're friction points revealing where your assumptions don't match reality. Imagine two entrepreneurs whose startups collapse. One spends weeks blaming the market, investors, even luck. The other dissects the wreckage for lessons, emerging with sharper skills for their next venture. Both faced the same event, but only one treated it as Musonius intended, not as a verdict, but as vital feedback. The ancient Stoics didn't just tolerate failure, they normalized it as part of mastery. Think of an apprentice blacksmith. Their first blades shatter under stress, their hammer strikes miss the mark, but each error corrects their technique. Musonius framed life's hardships the same way. Does the sailor gain experience by sailing calm seas? He'd ask. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who reframe failures as learning opportunities develop greater resilience than those who avoid setbacks altogether. The key difference: ownership. Victimhood asks, "Why me?" Stoicism counters with, "What now?" Consider Thomas Edison's famous line about inventing the light bulb. "I didn't fail. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." That's pure Stoic reframing. But here's where most modern interpretations fall short. Edison didn't just cheerfully shrug off those attempts. He logged each failure meticulously, analyzing why filaments burned out or vacuums leaked. That's the nuanced heart of Stoic practice, not positive thinking but forensic thinking. When your project flops or relationship fractures, the Stoic question isn't, "How do I stay upbeat?" It's, "What exactly does this reveal about my methods, my expectations, or my blind spots?" This week, try a radical exercise. Pick one past failure, a botched job interview, a rejected manuscript, a fitness goal abandoned. Now write it a Stoic response in 3 parts. First, state the facts without melodrama. I prepared 20 hours for the interview but fumbled the technical questions. Next, identify what was truly within your control. I could have practiced aloud more, not just reviewed notes silently. Finally, extract one actionable lesson. Next time, I'll simulate the pressure environment beforehand. Notice what's missing. No self-flagellation, no external blame. Just cold-eyed analysis turning dead ends into detour signs. The magic lies in seeing failure as a diagnostic tool rather than a personal indictment. When a chef's soufflé collapses, they don't declare themselves a terrible person. They check oven temperatures and egg consistency. Musonius would argue your emotional soufflés deserve the same clinical curiosity. That presentation that bombed, its data on communication gaps, the friendship that fractured. A lesson in boundary setting. Even chronic pain patients using Stoic techniques show measurable improvements when they shift from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "How can I adapt around this?" Here's the ultimate test. The next time you face a setback, imagine Musonius at your shoulder whispering, "This isn't your obstacle, it's your curriculum." Because the goal isn't to avoid falling. It's to learn how to land in a way that leaves you wiser, tougher, and more prepared for the next leap. The Roman Emperor Hadrian, despite his imperial luxury, reportedly slept on army cots and marched barefoot with his troops in winter, not because he had to, but because he understood a fundamental Stoic truth: comfort is the enemy of resilience. This practice of voluntary discomfort wasn't about self-punishment. It was preventive medicine for the soul. Epictetus, who endured slavery and physical disability, put it bluntly: difficulties show men what they are. In crossing them, you discover strength you didn't know existed. Modern science confirms this ancient wisdom. Controlled exposure to stressors, from cold showers to intermittent fasting, triggers biological and psychological adaptations that make everyday challenges feel manageable by comparison. Think of voluntary discomfort like emotional weightlifting. You wouldn't walk into a gym and immediately bench press 300 pounds. You'd start with lighter weights and gradually increase. The same applies to Stoic toughening exercises. A cold shower isn't just about enduring the initial shock. It's training your mind to stay calm when life douses you with metaphorical ice water. Research shows cold exposure boosts dopamine by 250%, literally rewiring your brain to handle stress better. Similarly, occasional fasting, even skipping one meal, teaches you that hunger pangs won't break you, a lesson that translates to resisting impulsive urges in other areas of life. But here's the critical nuance Stoics emphasized. This isn't about masochism or pushing yourself to collapse. Seneca warned against zealous self-denial for its own sake, comparing it to sharpening a knife so aggressively you destroy the blade. The goal is moderate discomfort enough to stretch your limits, not snap them. Ancient Stoics would occasionally wear thin cloaks in winter or sleep on hard beds, not to suffer but to prove to themselves, "I can thrive with less than I assume." Start small, pick one daily comfort and intentionally disrupt it. Hit the floor when your alarm rings instead of snoozing. Those extra 9 minutes of fragmented sleep don't restore you, but conquering the impulse to delay builds discipline. Walk a mile without checking your phone, or take the stairs when the elevator beckons. These micro-challenges act like vaccinations against life's larger adversities. When your flight gets cancelled or your Wi-Fi crashes, you'll have practiced the art of adapting. Epictetus captured the essence perfectly. Practice deprivation regularly, so when fate imposes it, you won't panic. That's the ultimate aim, not to chase hardship, but to render yourself immune to its intimidation. Because the person who willingly steps into cold water isn't just building tolerance for discomfort. They're proving day by day that most barriers aren't walls, they're invitations to grow stronger. Seneca once wrote a letter to his friend Lucilius describing how he'd relish simple bread as if it were a feast, not because the bread was extraordinary, but because he chose to fully inhabit the experience of eating it. This wasn't just gratitude, it was alchemy. The Stoics didn't merely count blessings, they dissolved the barrier between ordinary and extraordinary by sharpening their attention until every sip of water, every breath of cool air became a minor miracle. Modern gratitude practices often devolve into checklist exercises. I'm thankful for my health, my job, my family. But Stoic gratitude digs deeper. It asks, what if you lost this tomorrow? How would you savor it differently today? Consider the last time you truly tasted your morning coffee. Not gulped it between emails, but let its warmth linger on your tongue, noticed its bittersweet depth. That's Stoic presence in action. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to see the extraordinary in the mundane, the way sunlight dapples through leaves, the intricate mechanics of a door hinge. Everything is interwoven, he wrote, and the web is holy. When you start tracing these invisible threads, the farmers who grew your food, the engineers who designed your smartphone, mundane objects become portals to awe. Here's where gratitude collides with physics. Entropy guarantees that everything you love, your favorite mug, the sound of a loved one's laugh, even your own heartbeat, is temporary. The Stoics weaponized this truth. By mentally rehearsing loss premeditatio malorum, they didn't breed fear, they engineered appreciation. Picture holding an ice cube in your palm. Its fleeting nature, the way it melts despite your grip, is what makes its coolness precious. Your life is full of these melting cubes, the functional car you don't think about until it stalls, the unremarkable Tuesday that becomes memory only when it's gone. Your challenge this week is a mundane appreciation journal. Each evening, spotlight one ordinary item or experience and dissect it with Stoic curiosity. Not, I'm grateful for my bed, but what does this mattress feel like after a day on my feet? Who designed its springs? How many nights of safety has it given me? This isn't poetic fluff, it's neural retraining. UCLA research shows detailed gratitude exercises thicken the prefrontal cortex, the brain's resilience center. Try an experiment tomorrow with a routine act, say, turning on a faucet. Pause mid-motion and trace the water's journey, the pipes snaking underground, the treatment plants removing toxins, the millennia of human innovation that let clean water appear at your whim. Seneca would call this bearing witness to civilization's invisible hands. The faucet becomes more than a utility, it's a testament to collective human ingenuity. That shift from passive consumption to active reverence is how you weaponize gratitude against life's autopilot. The ultimate test comes when inconvenience strikes. Next time your train delays or your Wi-Fi flickers, defy the instinct to groan. Instead, marvel at the absurd privilege of high-speed transit or global connectivity, luxuries even emperors lack. Epictetus, who lived with just a clay lamp and a frayed cloak, would remind you, he is rich who delights in his portion. Your portion includes wonders Marcus Aurelius couldn't fathom: antibiotics, instant knowledge, citrus fruits in winter. The Stoic twist: these aren't entitlements. They're fleeting gifts to be met with wide-eyed attention, like a child seeing fireflies for the first time. Tonight, pick the most mundane object within reach: a pencil, a teaspoon, a light switch. For 60 seconds, study it as if you just discovered it on an alien planet. Notice its weight, its design flaws, its hidden usefulness. That's your first journal entry, because gratitude isn't about grand gestures. It's about catching your breath mid-routine and realizing you've been standing knee-deep in miracles all along. Marcus Aurelius never wanted to be emperor. Plucked from philosophy studies at age 17 and thrust onto the throne, he faced relentless wars, political betrayals, and a devastating plague that killed millions. Yet history remembers him not as a ruler who cracked under pressure, but as the philosopher king who governed with a steadiness that still inspires leaders today. His secret weapon wasn't military might or charismatic speeches, it was a battered notebook now called Meditations, filled with Stoic reminders like this: waste no more time arguing what a good leader should be. Be one. That's the essence of Stoic leadership, not demanding virtue from others, but embodying it so completely that it becomes contagious. Consider how modern leadership often glorifies reactionary decisiveness: the CEO who barks orders during a crisis, the coach who berates players after a loss. Stoicism flips this script. When barbarians threatened Rome's borders, Marcus didn't rally his troops with rage. He methodically strengthened supply lines and diplomacy. When senators plotted against him, he responded with measured justice rather than vengeful purges. His restraint wasn't weakness, it was tactical. Research on emotional contagion proves what Marcus intuited. A leader's calm literally alters team members' brain chemistry, lowering collective stress hormones and sharpening focus. The Stoic leader's toolkit starts with procesche mindful self-awareness. Before addressing a team conflict or delivering tough feedback, Marcus would mentally rehearse: what if they refuse to listen? What if emotions flare? This preparatory grounding allowed him to detach from ego and focus on solutions. Modern equivalents abound. Imagine a hospital administrator during a staffing crisis. The Stoic approach isn't to vent frustration at overwhelmed nurses, but to ask, what's truly controllable here? Staffing ratios, scheduling efficiencies. My own tone in meetings. Neuroscience confirms this works. When leaders name their emotions, this is anxiety about metrics. They regain executive function to problem solve. Fairness was Marcus' North Star, even when it cost him personally. He famously judged legal cases until nightfall, often siding with peasants over aristocrats. Stoic fairness isn't blanket equality, it's impartial assessment of each situation's merits. Picture a manager allocating promotions. The Stoic standard demands auditing biases. Am I favoring this candidate because they mirror my background? Does that shy analyst deserve recognition despite not being the loudest in meetings? Marcus modeled this by appointing governors based on competence, not connections, a radical move in Rome's chronistic politics. Leading by example seems obvious until you dissect what it truly requires. Marcus slept on a military cot during campaigns alongside his troops. He taxed himself heavily to fund public works. Modern leaders might not need literal austerity, but the principle holds. Your team notices every gap between your words and actions. Studies on authentic leadership show employees tolerate tough decisions from leaders who share the burden. A Stoic principle supervising teachers during a budget cut doesn't just announce layoffs from an ivory tower, they freeze their own salary first. A Stoic entrepreneur doesn't preach work-life balance while emailing staff at midnight. Your sphere of influence need not be an empire to benefit from this framework. A parent navigating a toddler's tantrum demonstrates Stoic leadership by pausing before reacting angrily, showing that emotions can be acknowledged without being obeyed. A soccer captain keeping morale high after a brutal loss teaches more about resilience than any pep talk. Even in solitary roles like writing or artistry, leading yourself stoically means creating systems that outlast fleeting motivation. Marcus ruled alone, yet his journal entries read like conversations with a stricter, wiser version of himself, a reminder that self-leadership precedes external impact. The ultimate test comes when leadership feels thankless. Marcus endured betrayal by his closest general, the death of 8 children, and constant physical pain. His response: the obstacle becomes the way. When your team overlooks your sacrifices or your family takes your patience for granted, Stoicism reframes the challenge. True leadership isn't about applause, it's about living in such alignment with virtue that your mere presence elevates others. That's why Marcus scribbled reminders like, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself," on battlefields and in fever wards. Not because it was easy, but because he knew the weight of influence. People become what their leaders normalize. Your choices today, how you handle stress, admit mistakes, or champion fairness, aren't just about you. They're the blueprint someone else might follow tomorrow. Consider an old scar. It tells a story of healing, not just the wound. That's the Stoic view of the past, not a chain that binds you, but a teacher whose lessons you've absorbed before moving forward. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal tragedy into timeless wisdom, offered a radical reframe. Don't demand that things go as you wish, but wish them as they go. At first glance, this sounds like surrender, but look closer. It's an invitation to reclaim the energy you've spent wrestling with ghosts. Rumination masquerades as reflection. The difference: one keeps you circling the same mental drain, while the other extracts wisdom and steps away. Imagine holding a hot coal, angry at how it burned you. The Stoic doesn't deny the burn's reality. They acknowledge it, learn its cause, then finally, deliberately open their hand. Ancient Stoics practiced this through premeditatio malorum, envisioning worst-case scenarios, not to dwell on them, but to disarm their power. When you've already accepted that losses, betrayals, and failures could happen, their sting loses potency when they do. Modern psychology validates this. Studies on post-traumatic growth show that people who engage in benefit finding, identifying how hardships strengthen them, recover faster than those stuck in "why me?" loops. A surgeon who botched a procedure might obsess over the mistake, or they might analyze it dispassionately, implement new safety checks, and use the experience to teach others. Both remember the event, only one is free of its weight. Here's your exercise: a release letter to an old regret, not a rant or a rewrite, but a structured farewell. Start with the facts. This happened. No sugarcoating or dramatic embellishments. Next, separate what was truly within your control from what wasn't. That job you lost during the pandemic. Your performance was your domain. The economic collapse wasn't. Then, identify the harvestable lessons. This taught me resilience. That revealed my blind spots. Finally, the Stoic farewell. I've taken what you came to teach me. Now I lay you down. Burn the letter, shred it, or seal it in an envelope labeled "paid in full." The ritual isn't theater. It's a neurological signal that this chapter's work is done. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his Meditations. Rather than agonizing over his father's early death, he wrote, "What stands in the way becomes the way." His past wasn't erased, it was repurposed as fuel. Contrast this with how we often handle regrets: replaying conversations where we wish we'd spoken differently, clinging to relationships that ended years ago, or treating youthful missteps as life sentences. The Stoic asks, does this memory still serve my growth, or is it just mental clutter? Try this today. Pick one past event that still pulls at your attention: a missed opportunity, a harsh word spoken, a road not taken. Now apply Epictetus' test. Can I change this? If not, your only remaining choice is whether to let it change you for better or worse. Like a tree that grows around a fence post, your past becomes part of your structure without defining your shape. The scar remains, but the skin around it grows stronger. That's the alchemy of Stoic acceptance, not erasing history, but transforming its weight into wisdom. The word Stoic often conjures images of stone-faced statues, people who have traded laughter for logic and warmth for willpower. But here's the paradox the ancients understood. True Stoicism doesn't diminish joy, it refines it. Imagine the difference between a sugar rush and sustained energy, or between a fireworks display and the steady glow of a lighthouse. That's the distinction Seneca drew when he wrote, "Pleasure is unstable here one moment, gone the next." But joy is what remains when you stop chasing shadows and start living in alignment with your nature. Eudaimonia, the Greek concept of flourishing that Stoics pursued, wasn't about grim endurance. It was the quiet thrill of a sailor navigating by the stars or a blacksmith perfecting a blade, not fleeting happiness dependent on externals, but deep contentment rooted in virtue. Marcus Aurelius found it in the discipline of dawn workouts before ruling Rome. Musonius Rufus discovered it in teaching philosophy while exiled to a barren island. These weren't joyless acts, they were expressions of a soul fully engaged with its purpose. Modern culture often confuses joy with constant euphoria, the dopamine hits of likes, purchases, or adventures. Stoicism offers a corrective, joy as the natural byproduct of living well. Think of a gardener who doesn't obsess over each bloom but tends the soil faithfully, knowing flowers will follow. Seneca observed this in his own life. The wise man is joyful when his fields yield little and joyful when they overflow, not because of the harvest but because he remains unchanged by either. Your task today isn't to hunt for grand pleasures, but to identify one simple, virtuous source of joy. Maybe it's the focused silence of morning pages or the crisp efficiency of a well-organized desk. Perhaps it's the unglamorous act of listening fully to a child's rambling story without glancing at your phone. These moments don't scream for attention like a viral video, but they hum with a resonance that lingers. The Stoic secret: joy isn't something you find, it's something you uncover by stripping away everything that isn't essential. Like sunlight breaking through clouds, it was there all along, obscured by the clutter of endless wanting. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, famously carried an empty cup to teach this very lesson. Fulfillment begins when you realize how little you need to feel full. So today, let your joy be measured not by what you acquire, but by what you finally stop chasing. Building a Stoic routine isn't about grand transformations or dramatic overhauls. It's the quiet art of stacking small, deliberate practices until they become as natural as breathing. Epictetus, who knew firsthand how discipline compounds over time, offered a timeless truth. Progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily, little by little. That's the heartbeat of Stoic practice, showing up consistently, even when the changes feel invisible. Think of it like sharpening a blade. A single stroke doesn't reveal the edge, but repeated motion turns dull metal into something that cuts cleanly through life's toughest challenges. Start with anchoring rituals. Just as a ship needs mooring lines to stay steady in a storm, your mind needs daily touchstones. A morning ritual might include 5 minutes of premeditation, visualizing potential obstacles with detached curiosity. Not to dwell on worst-case scenarios, but to rehearse responding with virtue. Imagine traffic derailing your commute. Instead of scripting frustration, you'd think, "This is my chance to practice patience." Evening routines could mirror Seneca's retrospective journaling, where you dissect the day with gentle precision. Where did I act with courage? Where did fear steer me off course? These bookend practices create a container for the chaos in between. The key is sustainability. A common trap is launching with ambitious hour-long meditations or exhaustive virtue logs, only to abandon them when life intervenes. Stoicism thrives on moderation. Begin with just 2 core practices, perhaps morning intention setting and nightly reflection, each lasting no longer than it takes to brew a cup of tea. Research on habit formation confirms this approach. Small, consistent actions rewire neural pathways more effectively than sporadic bursts of effort. Now integrate weekly check-ins. The Stoics were relentless auditors of their progress, not to self-flagellate, but to course-correct. Set aside 20 minutes each Sunday to review your journal entries for patterns. Maybe you'll notice irritation peaks when you skip lunch, or that your best decisions come after walks in nature. These aren't trivial observations, they're data points for designing a life aligned with wisdom. Here's a customizable template to adapt. Morning 5-10 minutes premeditation. Identify one potential challenge today. How would your best self navigate it? Virtue focus, choose one quality to embody, e.g., patience in meetings, curiosity during disagreements. Evening, 5-10 minutes, 3-question review, what went well? What could improve? What did I learn? Gratitude anchor, note one ordinary thing you'd miss if it were gone. Weekly 20 minutes pattern tracking, circle recurring struggles or triumphs in your journal. Adjust routines accordingly. Voluntary discomfort, plan one micro-challenge, cold shower, delayed meal, tech-free hour. The magic lies in flexibility. A nurse working night shifts might flip the script, reflecting before sunrise, setting intentions at dusk. Parents might involve kids in gratitude practice at dinner. Stoicism molds to your life, not the other way around. Remember Cato the Younger, who wove Stoic practices into every role: statesman, soldier, father. His strength came not from perfect adherence, but from returning to the fundamentals whenever he stumbled. Your routine will have gaps, travel disrupts it. Illness interrupts it. The measure of your practice isn't flawless execution, but the willingness to begin again. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his campaign tent, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Even missed days become part of the training, reminders that progress isn't linear but cumulative. This isn't about adding more to your plate, it's about transforming how you hold what's already there. That 5-minute wait at the school pickup line, an opportunity to practice presence, the colleague who tests your patience, a sparring partner for your temperance. Over time, these micro moments of awareness build into unshakable habits. You'll find yourself pausing before reacting, reframing setbacks as curricula, and spotting joy in places you once rushed past. Not because you forced it, but because you showed up day by day, little by little, until Stoicism stopped being something you do and became who you are. We've traveled far together, from the dawn rituals of Marcus Aurelius to Seneca's nightly reflections, from wrestling with failures as teachers to finding joy in the seemingly ordinary. But here's the truth no philosophy can afford to ignore. Wisdom untested is just words on a page. Stoicism was never meant to be admired from a distance like a museum exhibit. It's a forge where resilience is hammered out through deliberate practice. Every cold shower you choose, every harsh word you pause before speaking, every setback you mine for lessons, these aren't just exercises. They're the repetitions that train your mind as surely as lifting weights trains your body. Consider how muscles grow. Fibers tear under stress, then heal stronger. Your character develops the same way. When you consciously reframe an insult as a test of patience or view a traffic jam as a chance to practice acceptance, you're not just solving a problem, you're sculpting neural pathways that make virtue more automatic next time. The Roman Stoics called this ascesis, discipline training, not punishment but preparation. And just as an athlete doesn't wait for game day to start conditioning, you can't wait for crisis to sharpen your resilience. The drills matter now. Look back at your own journey these past minutes. Which Stoic tool resonated most? Perhaps it was the morning ritual of setting intentions, or the evening habit of dissecting the day's events like a surgeon analyzing a procedure. Maybe it was the realization that even in chaos, you always control where to aim your attention. Whatever stuck with you, that's your starting point. Don't overwhelm yourself trying to adopt every practice at once. Mastery begins with a single step, one focused effort repeated until it becomes second nature. Marcus Aurelius left us a challenge sharper than any sword. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Notice the urgency, not eventually, not when conditions are perfect, now. Philosophy's value isn't measured in how many quotes you can recite, but in how you respond when life demands your best and offers its worst. The contractor who chooses integrity over cutting corners, the parent who models patience during tantrums, the student who treats failure as feedback. These are Stoics in action. So here's your call, not to perfection but to practice. Pick one Stoic exercise from this video, just one, and commit to it for the next 7 days. Maybe it's the 5-minute morning premeditation or the evening review where you mine your day for lessons. Perhaps it's as simple as asking yourself in moments of stress, what part of this can I actually control? Set a reminder on your phone, jot it on your mirror, tie a string around your wrist, whatever it takes to make it tangible. The road ahead won't be smooth. Some days you'll forget, other days you'll remember but resist. That's when Epictetus' voice should echo in your mind. No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Your growth will follow the same law, blossom by blossom, choice by choice. The only mistake is not beginning. So close this screen, take one deliberate breath and take the first step. Not toward becoming a Stoic, but toward revealing the Stoic you've always had the